Hey, Keith Townsend from the CTO Advisor. This is a live Periscope Ask Me Anything on our cloud study. Specifically, we've created this scenario in which a enterprise company has to deal with the current pandemic situation with remote workers. If you're like a typical organization, you're not prepared to deploy thousands of VDI to support remote workers. So I wrote this, or I did a CTO dose on this a few months ago near the front end of the pandemic and said, hey, what would happen if you needed to deploy 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 VDI instances, but you don't have the actual capacity in your data center? What would you do? This is like a real life DR situation that's happened globally all at one time. So you're not going to procure new hardware. You're not going to get that stuff into your data center fast enough to get the capacity that you need. You're not going to get the links provision, etc. You could look out to doing something like a AWS desktop VDI solution hosted in the public cloud, but the challenge is that you're changing the way you do business. And for end users, this is a shock to the system. How do you go from using traditional desktops, etc., your current remote access solution, to using a completely new solution? Obviously, one of the advantages of a VMware-based cloud solution is that you can expand your current solution out to the public cloud. So if you have Citrix or you're using Horizon, you can just deploy Citrix or Horizon and VMware on the public cloud. So that's the kind of backstory for the study that we're doing. So the original idea is that we were going to take VMware Horizon distribution, and we were going to extend that from our on-premises data center, the CTO Advisor hybrid infrastructure, sponsored by Intel, by the way, to the public cloud. The basics across public cloud providers is pretty simple. We'd go to the CTO Advisor data center is in a colo, and we are hosting VMware vSphere 6.7 vSAN deployment. We have proximity to a lot of cloud providers, so we can go with someone like a Mega Port, which is what we did, provision a 10 gigabit link, and now we can virtually connect to each one of the cloud providers anywhere from 50 megabits all the way up to 10 gigabit, depending on the need. So that's what we did. We provisioned a 10 gigabit circuit. Then we worked with initially Oracle, who's sponsoring the study, to connect to OCI, deploy their solution, do some common VMware vSphere tasks, do linked mode between the data centers, and see what's the what with each solution. So where we're at in the study. So far, we've tested the Oracle solution, which should, in the next couple of weeks or so, be announced as GA. We tested the VMC on AWS, and over the next few days, we'll start testing Google. We're still talking with Microsoft. Their solution is in preview. And for the most part, with the exception of Oracle, we've basically gone and gotten the retail versions of the solution. There hadn't been any considerations as far as capacity other than Oracle, because obviously they're sponsoring the study. So we are using their facilities to do the testing. So we went and I plucked down the credit card, paid the $2,000 to get VMC on AWS. We're plucking down the credit card to get the Google capacity. And then we'll go back and hopefully do Azure. Unfortunately, Azure is a $15,000 minimum buy-in, and that's a lot of money. So we'll see if if we can work a deal with Microsoft to at least get them included into the study. So what have we found? we found that, yeah, Josh, ouch. We found that the two solutions take aim at two completely, the audience may overlap, but it's audiences that want two completely different experiences. The VMC, let's start with VMC on AWS, because that is by far the most popular solution on the market as VMware's go-to-market partner. I knew this coming in, but I did not put two and two together. VMware provides the service. It is a VMware service. Logically, when you think about it, okay, great. But what does that practically mean? It practically means that when I went to my AWS console and searched for VMware Cloud in the AWS console control plane, it's just not there. There is no option for VMware Cloud on AWS. They don't even reference that you should go and talk to VMware. You have to go to cloud.vmware.com, create a VMware Cloud account, and then provision the service through VMware. This isn't unlike many services that AWS has partnered with in the past. There's plenty of services that you go to their portal and then they provision the services within your AWS account. However, I don't think there's a scale of service that's similar to the VMware and AWS relationship. One of the things that became obvious to me is that it is I don't want to call it a disjointed experience, but it is a separate experience. I'm creating a separate VMware Cloud account to consume resources in AWS. VMware is going to charge me by the hour for those resources. However, my main goal is to integrate with the AWS platform. So on the back end, and this is the meat of the testing Tom Green will do throughout the day, is what does that mean if I'm a vSphere admin and I want to consume VMC on AWS, and I also want to integrate VMC on AWS with my Amazon VPC. The VMware solution, getting into a little bit of technicality, the VMware solution sits in its own VPC, in a VMware controlled VPC, which creates some interesting scenarios from an administrative perspective. And I see why VMware had to do some of the design decisions that they made. Connecting from their private VPC into my VPC requires some network plumbing to be done, meaning I need some type of VPC to VPC connectivity out, which includes accounts that are not managed by the same organization. So I have a bevy of options to do that. You can do direct connect. You can do a bunch of a VPN, et cetera. But it's a enterprise. From a AWS perspective, they're treating it as two different accounts, networking accounts from a VPC perspective. So you have to deal with that reality. Flipping back to the Oracle solution pretty quickly, before we finish the conversation on VMC on AWS, Oracle does it slightly different. The SDDC is provisioned, it's a Oracle solution. So the SDDC is provisioned in the VCN. There's still some networking magic that you have to do to get a VM in your vSphere environment talking to a Oracle Cloud service, but it's all within your VCN, the equivalent of the AWS VPC. So back to the VMware solution. VMware and AWS designed this solution to be very familiar to a cloud type experience. It is a black box. It doesn't matter how much engineering goes into the underlay. You won't see it. You can't go to the about and see what version of vSphere you're running in the vCenter. It is a cloud solution that is hidden away from you. Tom calls it engineering magic. I think that's a pretty good characteristic of it. But from a day-to-day operations perspective, it impacts your operations. You're not managing vSphere in this traditional sense. And I've called for this type of capability for a provider to do this type of capability, that I just want to consume VMs and I want to consume them in a familiar way. VMware Cloud on AWS is a familiar interface for the vSphere admin. It's not the same. It's familiar enough that a vSphere admin, once it's configured and set up, they can go and they can do the things with caveats that they're used to doing. They have to just figure it out. One of the things that I was asked last year when I was pitching VMware Cloud to a customer, he asked, what doesn't work? The rumors that he had heard, the feedback that he had heard, that there was a bunch of things because VMware abstracts the underlay from you that don't work. VMware needed at the time to still do work so that they can have their partners' solutions work. We're starting to see more of that. For example, Veeam now works. There's a VMware Cloud on AWS version for a Veeam, etc. But natively, not every solution works with VMware Cloud on AWS, which takes us over to the OCI piece of it. What have I learned about OCI? VMware's solution, or Oracle's VMware solution in OCI. It takes the flavor of Oracle Cloud infrastructure. If you're not familiar with Oracle Cloud infrastructure's basic go-to-market concept, is that they're appealing to enterprise IT organizations. What do you do today? And how do you need to take what you do today, do it in a public cloud, and then consume those cloud services natively? They've taken that approach with VMware. They basically have some automation in the front. You provision your SDDC, it deploys in your VCN, and you have a bunch of bare metal vSphere servers. That's Oracle solution. You have a bunch of bare metal vSphere servers. What does that functionally mean? That means that I can go into vCenter. I can look at the hardware underlay. I can take if I still have MIBs and I'm still using MIBs, I can still use those MIBs. Tom just highlighted that, you can see that it has, vSphere 6.7 update 3. You see the version of vSphere running. Oracle lets you decide when you're going to move from one version of vSphere to the other versus, VMware just has you on that main code line, distribution line from when they release new features. It is a cloud service versus Oracle is giving you hosted vSphere. And I don't think one is better than the other one. It's what it is. What are you looking for as a customer? Are you looking for a native VMware vSphere's operational solution in which you're using your current operations and you're using someone else's data center provided by that? And or do you want a managed solution? Tom just read my line, managed versus hosted. Do you want a managed solution in which VMware Cloud is just managing vSphere for you and you just consume vCenter and a bunch of VMs? Completely different solutions solving the same problem. I love that the industry is providing alternatives. As a executive, as a architect, you have enough solutions out on the market to base your decisions solely based on your needs. Oracle has the argument, since they're extremely network friendly when it comes to egress charges, you can go to them for your vSphere in the cloud if you want to keep that native VMware operations and just do the networking back to AWS. From a egress charge perspective, Oracle is much more friendly than the other cloud providers. What does Google fit in all that? Well, you know what? That's that you guys have to stay tuned for that. You have to read the report once it's released to find out how does Google solution compare to the VMware solutions. I'm suspecting that they're going to fall somewhere in the middle, that you're going to get some Google magic and some Google Cloud magic. They've been doing this a little while with the Cloud Simple acquisition, where you get that native is inside my VPC in Google. I'm using some Google networking concepts, etc. But do I get unfeathered access to the underlay? I don't know. Tom, you'll have to tell the everyone on what the results of that is. You guys want to follow the project? Follow the hashtag CTO CTO Advisor Hybrid Infrastructure. What we're doing, everything that we're doing in the data center. Visit the website, thectoadvisor.com. We're launching a new website in the next couple of months, specifically so we can better organize and tell this story. Tom, and follow Tom on Twitter at Tom Tech Thoughts or Tech. I think it's at Tom's Tech Talk. He changed his Twitter handle. Or just search for Tom Green. Tom spells his name Thome, Green with an E. Yep, it's at Tom Talks Tech on the Twitters. Follow me. Obviously, you know how to do it. Talk to you next. CTO Dose. Ask me anything.